Holy crap, I forgot all about Dollplay, or Save Hazel as it's sometimes called. In the hiatus between Season 1 and Season 2, Fox hired Swedish studio The Company P to make a Dollhouse alternate reality game to build hype for Season 2. The Company P has nothing to do with Joss Whedon, so Dollplay doesn't reflect on him at all, but it's part of the Dollhouse series worth a look. I miss Dollplay, so I'm just piecing it together from the few sites that talked about this that haven't gone offline by now. Unfortunately, it seems that all of the ARG strategizing took place on the official Fox forums, which were completely deleted after the ARG ended, so I can't just peruse unfiction like I would for a normal ARG. Stupid Fox. It just figures. So our protagonist is a young woman named Hazel Rose, played by actress Haley Araya. As a result of there being so few screenshots, it's hard to tell how sexualized the character was. From what few pictures remain, the character seems treated pretty respectfully in that department, but the fansite Active Dollhouse did note that she seemed to be wearing a Catholic schoolgirl outfit at some point. I really can't make any meaningful judgments with such poor data, though. The premise involves a division of Rossum called the Orpheus Initiative, again probably named by Clyde 2.0.
Sounded badass.
The purpose of the Orpheus Initiative was to give the extremely wealthy a way to talk to dead relatives. Though the project was supposedly ended in 1999, a website for its laboratories popped up in 2009. Hazel, on the search for her birth mother Dr. Andrea Rose, investigates the initiative. While checking out a supposedly abandoned Orpheus lab in LA, she accidentally locks herself in a shipping container with a lab inside, and the container is put on a ship that sails out of harbor. All she can do is work with what's in the lab. There are blood stains and bullet holes on the walls. In the room, there's an imprinting chair codenamed Ewan that functions with a device called Cameron, as well as imprint wedges for her mother, Topher, and an Edward Bertucci. There is also a computer with access to the Orpheus website, and only the Orpheus website. She uses the website's interview uplink to make a call for help, urging people to help her figure out what to do. Players then upload videos of themselves role-playing and offering advice.
You can take that paper and the magic marker, and you got some tape. So we take the tape, and now, look, you can reach that much further, see? Hit the button. Like, you got it. Okay, good. See you later.
The actress plays it very seriously, making the players treat her character like a real person and establish a trusting relationship. They can't just coldly make suggestions like giving orders to the robots on Starship Titanic. They have to act sympathetically to a scared woman in a scary situation, which, in line with normal ARG functions, encourages cooperation far more than the usual exchange of information in games, and is more feminist for humanizing this distressed character. As it turns out, Ewan and Cameron don't work quite the same as the chair in the dollhouse. If Hazel wipes and imprints herself, the effect will only be for 24 hours. This setup allows for the players to interact with all three imprinted personalities and try getting more information. At the same time, various files show up on the website about the characters involved. We learn that the Rossum Foundation funded the second phase of a long-term study conducted by psychologist Andrea Rose on whether a young girl with anger management issues, codenamed Foxtrot, no relation to the Dollhouse active beyond the Rossum naming scheme, could undergo a positive transformation with various therapy techniques. The first phase occurs when Foxtrot is in kindergarten, and Andrea's technique of choice is persuasion, but with a certain unsettling authoritarian slant. The second phase occurs when Foxtrot is 10, and Andrea, along with her assistant Topher, attempts to use early Dollhouse tech to alter Foxtrot's mind. As Andrea sees it, the experiment is a complete success. Despite some negative physical side effects that any decent person would call extremely harsh, Foxtrot's mental quote-unquote illness is quote-unquote fixed, which is to say she's turned into something like Clyde 2.0. A sweet girl full of loving obedience. It's implied that Topher was able to build off of Andrea's work to create the success of the LA Dollhouse. Eventually, Andrea, imprinted on Hazel, reveals that Foxtrot was actually Hazel herself. Andrea was basically an abusive parent who improperly used her position as a psychologist to try to control her rebellious daughter and escalated it to the point of mind control. This disturbing reveal is equivalent to Nolan revealing he sent Priya to the Dollhouse to be a sex slave. emphasizing that Rossum is about the abuses of power. All of Hazel's rebellious personality was sucked out of her head and dumped into a wedge. And it just so happens that the wedge is also there in the room with her. A player figures out how to permanently imprint Hazel with it, and her mind is mended. All that stuff her mom deemed problematic was necessary for her psyche, and now she is a strong woman who remembers everything and can get herself out. She explains what happened with the Orpheus Initiative. Apparently that bit about it allowing people to talk to dead relatives means that they scanned clients' dying relatives, imprinted them onto healthy actives, and then sold the actives to the clients.
It's been a banner year for human trafficking, and I really appreciate all of your help. Thank you.
This was what Rossum intended to do with Hazel, but her mom refused to let the client, Edward Bertucci, take Hazel away from her. In 1999, Edward met Andrea, Hazel, and an unnamed agent from Rossum in the lab to demand he be given what was promised to him. A fight broke out, and Andrea and the Rossum agent tried to wipe Edward, but accidentally downloaded all of Hazel's rebellious personality into him. Edward killed Andrea, and then the Rossum agent killed him. The Rossum agent intended to kill Hazel, but he couldn't bring himself to hurt a child, so he just sent her away into the adoption system. Hazel is able to open the door, and she finds herself on a ship in Greenland. She makes one last video to send a message to all her friends online. Player Joanna Griekspoor summarizes this video as saying, quote, "The dollhouse isn't the only one that imprints people. Everyone does it. Schools, parents, religion, governments, they all mold people into something they're not. Obedient little consumers who think they're changing the world by voting for the least bad choice every 4 years. But there is a line, and this is where Hazel draws hers. People can be molded, but everyone has a right to their own personality. Hazel thanks us for our help and warns us about dollhouses all over the world. Together we have to ensure that they go down." With that, she takes her gun, her money, and steps out onto the cold deck of a ship in the middle of Greenland. Unquote. While I suspect that Dollplay isn't canon, it's very in line with the anti-authoritarian message of Dollhouse. Rossum is ever present as an evil authority, and it manifests with Andrea trying to control her daughter. Her sense of entitlement leading her to such lengths to secure control is evocative of Nolan, and while Hazel doesn't get to kill her, Hazel's aggression motivating a neutral enemy to kill her is rather satisfying poetic justice. I don't see Andrea being an evil, controlling mother problematic from a feminist perspective, because such abusive women do exist, and the message is anti-authoritarian in general, as opposed to just being suspicious of women or anything like that. Andrea is actually a lot like Bennett. I don't think Dollplay had anything to do with what Joss was working on, but if Joss were to share that Andrea was an early stage of the Bennett character, I wouldn't be surprised. She is a villainous woman of such high intelligence that Topher learned from her, whose superiority complex led her to do horrible things to the protagonist, and then she was punished by the narrative in a way I don't find anti-feminist. As for Hazel, I suppose she's technically a damsel in distress, but she's treated a lot more respectfully than many damsels. In the first part of her study of the damsel in distress trope in video games, Anita Sarkeesian describes how many of the Mario games treat Princess Peach as an object competed over by the protagonist Mario and antagonist Bowser, a dynamic that can also be seen with the Master Chief fighting the Gravemind to secure Cortana. And I think the difference with Dollplay is that she's treated as subject and not object. There's no war with Rossum to save her, only a constantly present sense of danger and looming threat. Neither are the players able to take the form of a hero like Ballard or even Echo. They have to play themselves and reach out to a scared woman so they aren't allowed to be hammy about it. It's more of the empathetic spirit of the Needs actives or Terry's victims working together to escape, and I think it's a feminist handling as a result. Anyway, I suspect that this structure of having someone calling for help is more practical to quickly draw people into a recognizable game with a logical course of action, as opposed to the bigger ARGs like The Beast, which just put up odd things that people could investigate farther if they cared and were smart enough to figure out what to do. Looking at the ARGs of the Halo series, the first, called the Cortana Letters, was somewhere in the middle. Bungie sent a series of mysterious emails from the perspective of Cortana, then an unknown character, to their biggest fan site at the time, marathon.bungie.org. When Halo Combat Evolved became so popular, Microsoft hired 42 Entertainment to make I Love Bees to advertise Halo 2. 42 was far less intimate with their entry point and used the first variety with Dana begging people for help. Unlike the Cortana Letters, I Love Bees was advertised in the mainstream world, with a flickering address visible in a theatrical Halo 2 ad. I Love Bees needed to get a whole lot of people on track fast without breaking character, and having a character say she needs help and here are the facts as she understands them is an easy entry point. For Halo 3, the Iris ARG was again an intimate affair conducted between Bungie and the fan sites. Hardcore Halo fans are used to intelligent puzzles and don't need to be walked through it, but Iris was never very popular either. Dollplay tried to be I Love Bees and advertised in the mainstream world with a Fox press release and a TV guide blurb, so I think its Save Hazel entry point is more forgivable, especially because it doesn't stick to the traditional macho rescue narrative. The ultimate message of Dollplay is about Hazel overcoming her oppressive circumstances. Her mother and society considered her rebellious nature to be a disease, and thought that a more subservient Hazel would be more desirable. But the path to success comes from making Hazel whole again. Her aggression is a part of her, and taking that away is a horrible, dehumanizing action comparable to things like circumcision and foot binding. The situation is evocative of the feminist struggle, as well as all forms of subjugation and rebellion, and it has a general humanist and feminist message. Another Dollhouse-related item worth checking out is the Remains music video. Remains is a song written by Jed Whedon and Maurissa Tancharoen and performed by the latter for the end scene of Epitaph 1. As Mag, Zone, and Caroline look at the memorial and survey the damage brought on by Rasa meddling with science, Marissa's soft words lead us to feel a sense of sadness and loss. Well, Remains was made into a music video, written and directed by Anton King, starring Maurissa Tancharoen and Fran Kranz. Even though there's no official connection to Dollhouse, and the premise is different, it retains a lot of the same elements of Dollhouse as they relate to people being objectified and mistreated. It has Fran Kranz's character as a lonely guy buying a robot wife, Maurissa Tancharoen, in a red dress. He teaches her how to be his wife, but he always retains a cold authority. He grows tired of her and objectifies her by sticking her in a closet, while he tries to romance a human woman. But she rejects him, so he orders another robot, Maurissa in a blue dress. The first one cries for having been replaced, and she ends up completely unwanted after her face is damaged in a cooking accident. The guy and his new robot dump her in the trash, where she is rescued by an old homeless man, a veteran. Society once honored him, but then rejected him too. They look at each other and can only see each other's beauty, and they go off to be happy together. Again, this isn't a Mutant Enemy production, and isn't even really Dollhouse, but it continues Joss's Dollhouse legacy. Horrible things are depicted to make the same arguments against sexism, classism, and objectification across the board. Though we may feel sorry for Fran's character at first, by the end we hate him as a complete jerk. Similar to Joel Miner, the bad things are presented as bad, and we appreciate the robot and the homeless guy's chance at happiness away from their former admirers who now hate them. It's a feminist story just like Dollhouse is.